Hey YouTube, we're back with the ASH26, and where we left off, we just got the rudder hooked up, get the linkage installed, have the servo installed. I'd really like to get the elevator taken care of now, and if you remember from previous videos, our elevator is just going to be connected to the wire that's sticking out next to the servo cable there. Let's rotate this thing around, make it easier to work on. And what I hope to do is, maybe we should get this stuff reattached too. It's kind of pulling off of there. That's really ugly. I wish this balsa wood proved to be extremely soft on the rudder. I had no idea how soft it was going to be. Okay, so we got our soldering iron getting warm. And actually I'm going to get the monocoat iron. I'm going to get my covering iron plugged in too. And here in a minute we're going to use that to get that stuff kind of stuck down, I hope. Help it look a little better. Gotta get that away from the hot glue gun. Okay, so in the meantime, while those things are respectively heating up or cooling down or whatever they're doing, we have to ultimately get this wire attached to this wire. And this is just a naked wire. And obviously we don't want to be wasteful or anything, but I'm sort of resistant to putting a connector back here because the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to glue it together on this application. So really, to me, it's just, there's no advantage at all. Did you see how horrible that throw was? Jeez. There's really no advantage to hanging on a lot of this wire. I want it just enough so that I can fish it back out of here if I need to. And for that reason, I'm going to go ahead. Gosh, it's really awkward to work next to this thing. My helmet keeps hitting the horizontal stabilizer, so I got to pull that away a little bit. So obviously color for color, it's real simple. We'll cut this end off so it's got a usable amount of length on it. And we could conceivably put this back together on the front if we wanted to. I may do that just as a temporary means of hooking it up and testing it before we figure out how much extra we've got, because I mean clearly we're not going to need this much extra. There's a couple other ideas I've got, so but for now let's go ahead and get the strippers, the wire strippers, guys, don't worry, it's a family show here. We're gonna get these wires separated. Now they're gonna put this on limited or no monetization for sure. This video is not suitable for most advertisers. Use the word strippers. Now that I've mentioned it again, it for sure be on the list. I'll have to request a manual review, and then like someday when YouTube feels like it, they'll go through and say, well, 17 people that watched, we're not too worried about the lost revenue. Look how nice and even I stripped those guys. That's beautiful. So now, the unfortunate nature of working with these multi-conductor wires like this is that you kind of have to make enough of a relief here from one another so that you can get your heat shrink slipped on, which is always a pain in the butt. Not a whole lot you can do about it, except stagger your solder joints and then just not cover them. But I'm not going to do that. I want these things to be covered. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that soldering these lines together is no guarantee of weight savings, by the way. I just wanted to refresh your memory that solder is heavy, generally speaking. Well, depending on what type you use, too. If you use the good stuff that's got lead in it, it's heavy because lead is a heavy metal. It's heavy. And it's also heavy metal. Meaning that your body will not get rid of it if you get it into your system, and you'll just go nuts for the rest of your life. So don't do that. Alright, so we're just going to go ahead and strip these leads back. It's really not too much to this. But once we're all done, probably go ahead and get the other end set up. Now, I can build ends on these things, guys. I've got the tool to do it from Hobby King, incidentally. But I don't know. I build connectors all the time professionally, and I don't have problems building connectors. I hate building these servo ends. They're a pain in the butt. They're just small, and the crimping tool must just be kind of junky, the one I bought. Although it was like 14 bucks. I mean, it's not a super cheap tool. It wasn't like I found the cheapest one you could find. I found the first one I could find. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to interlace these wires instead of doing like a full over. That'll help hold down the size of the heat shrink required. Just going to grab one of these little pieces that we stripped, and we'll use that as a gauge for size. The yellow fits, the green fits, and the blue fits probably too. Look at that. Now, because I don't have all three colors, I'm probably reluctantly going to use a little bit of each, just to keep things nice and even. Actually, hold on, are they the same size? The green looks like it's supposed to be the same size, but I think it's actually a little bigger. And I really don't care what color they are, just so long as there's... Oh, we might have a piece up here. You always got to check for that one random piece that you cut before you needed it. Oh, there it is. So I'll use that little piece too. Yes, you know you save everything when you remember pieces of heat shrink that you need to use up. That one's got a bunch of holes in it. What the heck am I keeping that for? I'll use it on another project. Would be kind of cool if I had a piece of black that would fit. I guess I'll just use a little chunk of this blue. That way it's easy to distinguish between the three. So now my soldering iron is very warm by now. And I'm going to trim these to the exact same length. So I need to probably get on it pretty quick, or I'm going to ruin my tip. Okay, so today in my world, brown means blue. Just like that. Yellow means orange. And red means green. Now you're noticing that I didn't tin these first. Sometimes it's kind of smart to tin these wires first, because you'll get the heat down here and potentially sink down your heat shrink before you can actually get your connections made if you're not careful. Well, the only problem with that is once you tin a wire like this, you're pretty much stuck going and trying to wrap them like a hook. And that ends up being a pretty big connection point. So I'm going to try to hold that down, mitigate that to a certain extent. Normally the strippers on the bottom, strippers like a tool, guys, these things would be a little sharper, so you wouldn't have to use a second tool to do that. But in my case, they're not. Okay, so now this wire is just a little bit smaller gauge, so I'm going to do just a little bit more oomph to them. You notice I didn't twist those in my finger, between my forefinger and my pointer finger. That's because if you twist them, they won't usually go together very well. Just pull them straight. You don't want to braid them. or twist them. Well, the monocone iron is hot too. I can get this done in like 3 seconds. We're gonna do this real quick. Gosh, that's dirty. Hope it doesn't mark my thing. Oh, please work. Please make it beautiful. You know you want to be beautiful, Rudder. Oh, yes, baby. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, that's perfect. Okay, maybe it's not perfect. Maybe I'm getting a little overzealous here or something. Look how beautiful that came out, guys. Looks like I hadn't have amateurishly gone and screwed that all up before. But I did, and you know it because you watched it. Now over here, same thing, guys. I didn't know why that stuff peeled up so bad, but probably because it's like really old and made in China. Not that all things made in China are bad. Tons of things made in China are nice. That's what the Chinese salesman told me. Alright, so we got this thing hot enough. Now we just need to untangle it from all the other freaking wires. Get off of there. Okay. Cool. Let's do it. Got some solder here. Now we're going to just go color for color. I'm already breaking my own rule. Now you see what's happened, guys? It shrunk down on me. Son of a gun. Okay, well, we'll figure it out. We're not gonna make the same stupid mistake twice. We're gonna do it like 3 or 4 times. Okay, so now that I found the thing that rolled underneath my box, of course, now we can go back to soldering. I also plug my soldering iron back in because it's just annoying to work with a cooler soldering iron. Seems like everything's harder. I'm really glad I decided to heat up that monochrome. It looks so much better. So now, all is not lost on that heat shrink. I'll show you how we'll get that worked out. Okay, so we got that. Alright, so now on the other two, you'll notice I pulled off the wire, the respective heat shrink, so we can get a little solder in there. Despite my recommendation from 30 seconds ago. Alright, so we're going to let that cool for just a second. We'll slip this onto the other side. Just with the understanding that the smaller side may heat up a little bit quicker than the bigger side. But it just depends. Depends on what gets there first. Okay, now there's a little drip here, so I'm going to take that little drip off. Come on, focus your camera. There we go. Alright, cool. So now, because the last solder barely worked, because the tip was so nasty. Ooh, that's always nice when the light flickers. That means I'm about to kill this one. That's no good. These things don't last forever, guys. When you kill them, they're killed. Okay, here we go. If I could get it to cooperate. Okay. That's one thing I do like about having these with lights on them, is that you can tell when they're working. Just super handy. Now obviously you'll notice that this plane is not turned on right now. So don't have to worry about any dead shorts right now. Okay, so we just got those touched. Nice amount of solder in there. Okay, so let's see. I got a little drip going on the red one, but it looks like the yellow one will go over just fine. So we'll just get this done one step at a time. Being mindful not to burn our plane, even though we'll be underneath the Okay, so this one here has a little sharp point there. I don't know if you guys can make that out, but that sharp point's got to go. So I'm just going to touch it real quick and just kind of smooth it over. You don't need to, you're not trying to concern yourself with making a strong joint at that point. It's already strong, it's already satisfactory. What you're concerning yourself with is just getting that sharp spot off, so you don't have to let the heat linger too much on there. Okay. And yeah, one could have probably used a little bit more heat shrink on this one. But you know what? It'll work okay. Remember, weight is the enemy on an airplane. Almost always. That heat shrink has screwed up this sheath really bad. Okay, so now, like I was saying, all is not lost. Well, what I meant was we have a remedy. That doesn't mean that we're going to be able to use that piece of heat shrink. So, probably what I'm going to do is, I'll see if it'll come off on its own while it's warm. Yeah, see, I'm going to end up screwing up the rest of this wire. So I'll just, don't know the best approach at this point. I just don't want to make a dead short point inside of here that's like buried inside the wing, or I mean the fuse. So I'm actually gonna, you can sometimes put a little Windex on there and it'll slip, but I'm just gonna leave it. Actually, it's not gonna hurt anything. It's not that heavy, not so heavy that we need to cause a problem. I know it looks kind of funny, but I'm going to use this other piece of yellow because the yellow seemed to behave a little better than the blue for whatever reason. I'm not sure why that is, by the way. Different brand, obviously, but not sure why it behaved that much different. Okay, so we'll just get these things right next to each other. Get the heat on them, just like we did before with the other ones. Got to work really quick this time because that heat shrink is just right there. You can actually heat sink this stuff too. Like if you're really concerned about it, you can get that stuff wet. And sometimes that'll help to mitigate the heat away from the solder work where you're going to be working there. Okay. We have decent penetration there, so we'll go ahead and call that good. Yeah, but there's kind of sharp edges. I'm not crazy about the sharp edges though. One other thing you can do is when you're putting these things together and you have two sharp edges like that, you can just kind of grab either end and it will flatten to make it easier to slide your heat shrink on. You just don't want to go so crazy that you break the wires themselves, because that would not be good. It wouldn't be very beneficial. Okay, heat it up. See, I went a little bit heavy on the heat there. Lick my fingers, and that'll help to restore this little bit of sheath there that bulged and got stretched when we were trying to get that other heat shrink ready. Okay, so now one detail that's usually noteworthy when I'm doing this is I will usually try to kind of glue this to secure it and offer some level of stream relief. You can tape it, you can put a little heat shrink over it, but also it's not going to get in the way of binding up the linkage on the other side. So I'm going to grab a little bit of glue. We can go ahead and unplug this. Well, actually we're going to be using it in just a minute, so we'll just leave it. We'll just leave it to overheat. I do have heat shrink, but I don't care to do it that way. Let's use some regular medium thick CA. Of course it's clogged. Big surprise, right? Actually, no, it's not. It just feels clogged. I don't know why. Okay. Little kicker. And then all we're going to do is we're just going to glue over this area. And what that's going to do is that's going to stop these wires from migrating into each other. And in the event of a crash, this will be a strong point. So it will break. Hopefully last. I mean, you can't stop every wire from potentially breaking because that's just not real practical. If you get in a crash, you're not going to be able to control all those details. But I don't want them to damage the receiver or the battery or anything like that, if it can be avoided. So we'll just do a little bit of glue here. A couple of drips. And then at minimum, this one little section will be a little bit stronger than its counterparts before and after the splice. Okay. Now this is obviously an optional thing. You wouldn't have to do that, but if I have a servo go bad, I'm going to have plenty of extra cable. Alright, cool. So we're going to let that set for a second. We'll put this stuff back. We talked about that servo tool to make the servo ends. That's what the tool looks like. And it's tricky to use. I mean, I've had success, but my guess is if you buy one of these and you're not used to using these crimping tools, you're probably going to ruin 2 or 3 of them by the time you get a good one. And so really, for us, the trouble is less about ruining ends and more about getting the right length of cable. So obviously this cable is feeding up to the front, and that's our next step, or steps, is going to be getting that wire pulled through. So we've got it tied off here to the landing gear servo, the retract. Okay, So we'll untie that and then we'll just yank this through. Just kind of might guide it through a little bit. Okay. So we'll get that in there so that it's not like super tight, but it's not like loose to where it's flopping everywhere all the time. And you guys can see, now you can see it's up along that side. And it's really tempting to just bring it up and under there through those passages. And that would protect the wire. I'm going to go ahead and do that. No sense in fighting through later. It's going to be a lot harder later. Let's grab these forceps. And I'm going to shut off the iron. Alright guys, so if I want to feed this wire through, usually the easiest thing to do is to double it back on itself like this, and then feed it through with the forceps like this, and then it'll go through the hole for you. Double it back again and do the exact same thing. Okay. So now the only thing I don't like about that is that I really don't want the wire to come through on the top, because all the other servos are coming through the bottom. So I think for now I'm going to make an educated guess, and there is an opening down there, and I'm going for it. I don't think you guys can probably see. I can barely see myself, so you'll just have to bear with me for a second. The opening is down in there. So all I'm doing is I basically got my little bend like this. I'm just being careful not to grab the wire so hard that I would pierce through the sheaths. Okay, now I can pull the wire to wherever the other wires come out. So I think I'll just take those all out the same point. Because remember, the receiver is either going to be inside here, or it's going to be up on top, or I don't know. I do have a stabilizer in my receiver, but you know, hypothetically you're not supposed to have to have it at the center of gravity point on this style, but I suppose it's probably a little bit more effective there. Okay, so now the rationale in how I'm figuring the length of this is going to be all wrapped around how long is the other length of cable. Now, the only reason I do that is for the simple fact that the other cables are going to have to be tidied up too, but then right now I still have the flexibility to move this at least as far as the other ones. So if we end up with a little extra, I'm okay with that. But I do not want a little under what we need, because that I'm not okay with. And look guys, we are like almost exactly the perfect length. And I know I said I wasn't going to do the building end, but I think I might, because it ended up being the right length. So I'm just going to throw that in there for now. I'll probably just go ahead and build an end on, which we'll do next. Okay, so these are some of my bags, guys, that I use to organize my inventory of stuff. It's like, this is servo cables. I know you've seen me get into these things before, but I could probably organize things a little bit more effectively, but this has done the job for some time. The only problem with this is that I'm not 100% certain this is a bag where I've got them. Yeah, there they are. Okay, so basically these are the different styles of ends that I can build. So what I need to do is I need to determine which style I need to build. It's not going to be... These come in a pair of 10 for a couple of bucks. You'll notice that there's both the male and female housings, and then there's also both pins and sockets. Okay, so keep that in mind if you're going to order this Hobby King part number. Okay, and then this is the Hobby King style of the crimper, and I thought I wrote the part number on there. Well, evidently I didn't. You'll just have to look it up. It's called a servo signal cable termination tool or something like that. Okay, so the first thing you're going to do when you get these is you're going to try to make sure that they mate up. Make sure that they're going to be the right pins when they get all said and done. And the way you do that is you basically just push them into each other. And if a small baby connector comes out, you did it right. It's just a hilarious joke, guys. It's not really how it does. So, in our case, we need sockets like this, because this is going to be going onto the receiver, which has pins, okay? I'm not going to explain any more than that, but we need the style that's like the male style connector itself. So I'm going to get one out and I'll come right back. So it'll be like this, okay? So make sure you use a good known reference when you're lining up your colors if you're not familiar. Now you're going to strip these apart one by one, only as much as you think you're going to need. And then you're going to basically put this into the connector so you can figure out how long you need to strip back. Okay, so we're going to strip it to the just before this part here. Okay, and we're going to run out of memory, guys. So I apologize. We're probably going to have to continue on another video. I'll try to splice them together if it's a really bad break point. Otherwise there'll be two of them. Okay, so just strip this. Okay, once you have the wire stripped, then I usually leave them on the rails like this, so they're a little easier to work with. But you wouldn't have to do that, of course. Okay, so, but like I said, in my case, that's probably what I'm going to do, because that's what I'm used to. Now these, you can braid these, and in my case I cut mine just a little teeny bit too long. So I'm going to take and strip this, or just cut it a little bit off. Just barely any, okay? This is just a problem with my strippers, guys. It's not a normal problem to have. Okay, so now the way these work is you're gonna pinch this wire into this connector, and then this thing's gonna latch in. And you see how there's a smaller one and a bigger one? So, of course, I never had any instruction from anybody, so I had to figure out how to do this myself, which sucked. So what I've learned, it's actually kind of nice if you take the bigger one and you'll just basically put this in. Okay, so that it's in the machine. I gotta bend this one out of the way. It's giving me problems staying on the rail. I'll just break it off. Might be a little easier to video. Okay, so we lay that off to the side. So you can either use pliers to put this on, just to get it mechanically attached, because you'll attach the wire is going to fall into the front one, and then the sheath, the actual cable sheath, is going to fall into the back portion. And that's where you get your mechanical strength, the strain relief. And then the actual connection point is going to be up front. So once you have it set on there, I'm going to try my very best to keep this all in focus, guys. Gosh, it's always really tricky to do this. So you have to kind of line this up. And see why I do this a different way? Because that stupid thing always likes to get knocked off. Where the heck is that thing? There it is. Okay, so the slightly easier way is to just sit this on here and more or less grab yourself a tool that you can fold these in just a little teeny bit, just to hold the wire together, and then you can come back with your tool. It's very awkward. Okay, so there's one side that's open more than the other, and so you'll want to have it okay, so just like that, except we need to get this thing in there as well. Okay, so it's ready to crimp. See how it's lined up on the back, and then on the front it's extended out. Now watch what happens, guys. Okay, so now that's holding on to the sheath, and then the wire is bit into as well with the copper. Okay, so now if we were building this end, then that would slip in there and clip. Okay, even if you get this wrong and you build that the wrong way, you can flip them over. You'll have plenty of slack. So of all the connectors that I build in my day-to-day life, which I build quite a bit of them, these are a pain in the butt because the tool just doesn't work that hot. And it could be just because nobody's ever trained me the tricks to build these things. I'm sure there's people that could build these like 10 times faster than me and probably a whole lot cleaner. But I'm pretty anal about getting these things right because this is critical. This is an elevator after all, which the guy who sold me this said that the elevator is not that big a deal, and I'm like, well, okay. I use my elevator quite a bit, like for instance when I'm pulling up. But I know what he meant. He meant that a properly trimmed glider, you don't use the elevator that much. Okay, well, I still use it a lot. Okay, so once you get that click to a certain spot, then you can position it. Just get it right where you need it. Okay? Now there's a second size. You can clip it into the smaller size too. But I usually find that if you do that, you just make these really weak. And they will break. And then it's hard to troubleshoot because you'll have like 3/4 of the connection made. Well, not 3/4, it'd be 2/3. Okay, so same scenario. And here in a minute, when we're done building this, we'll go ahead and fire up the radio system and get things centered up as necessary. Then we can see the rudder and the elevator working together, which is really cool. I'm excited to see that. It's funny how excited I get about stupid little details like that. Like, obviously it's going to be working together when it's done. But I get all excited about those things. Alright guys, so that's held on there. That's held on there. See, that one didn't get crimped real awesome. But no big deal, no harm, no foul. And you can see that looks just like, not better, not worse, but just real similar to what you're going to get from the factory. So now we just need to line up the connector as they would be if the factory had built them. Okay, now notice there's one side and then the other side. One side has a tab that's going to allow this to be locked in, okay? And to be honest, I'm going to go ahead and pull up on one that's built. I'm going to pull one up and we'll just look at it and we'll be 100% sure, because I'm pretty sure I know which way to do it, but I just want to show you guys too. Okay, so you can lift that little tab, then pull this out, and just look how it comes out. Pay attention as it comes out, of course. Okay, so it looks like the crimp goes up. Okay, and you also notice a positive seat when it gets through. So we did this the correct direction with the crimp up. Okay, now I just need to get this thing kind of aligned, pseudo-aligned here. And then I'm going to take with the crimps up, I'll just force those in all at once because I can. Now you'll notice it's not going in, right? Now I'm going to show you what the smaller crimp part is. Okay? So now you take the second crimper, the second portion. Oh, son of a gun, I didn't mean to separate that far back. You're going to line that in there. and you're going to go in and crimp a second one. Okay? So it's like a two-stage crimp. This one is a lot easier to do. Okay. Alright, so now, with the crimps facing up, again, you see how there's that little wiggle and jiggle there? That's because the first one was shortened by just a touch. And it all adds up. That's why these things are so dang hard to build, so annoying to build. Okay, so they're going in now. Okay, they're clicked in, and clicked in. Okay, so now we should be able to do the tug test. Tight, tight, and tight. Okay, so now that comes from the elevator, so we should be able to plug that into the elevator channel, which is right next to the rudder. Let's make sure it goes in. Just be careful, don't force it if there's something not quite right. Okay, so once you're in, you're usually pretty good. So I'm going to pause and get this junk picked up, and then we'll watch it work. Alright guys, so we've got the radio on, and it's ready to go. We got the throttle cut and stick down, so we shouldn't have to worry. Well, also it's kind of unplugged too, which is handy. So we've got the radio system initiating. It's so cool. Oh, and then also I have this wired up. This won't be where I have it. In fact, let's renegotiate that. Let's do this, guys. See this? That's the gear switch. Does nothing. This does auxiliary 3. This does a gear switch. Now, the reason that is because bind is auxiliary 2 on a Lemon RX 7-channel with stabilization. And so my bind channel is actually the auxiliary 2. So auxiliary 2 is here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to system setup, yes. Channel assign. See how gear, I'm going to leave gear. Auxiliary 2, I'm going to assign to, I'm going to just leave it auxiliary 2, but then I'm going to go over to next. Auxiliary 2, I'm going to assign to A, okay? Now check this out. Okay, so that's simple. So that's basically going to change the position of the landing gear next. So, but for now, elevator, and rudder. So we'll give you guys a shot from back here. Elevator. Double check we don't have anything hitting. Beautiful. See that, guys? We're just clearing by the skin of our teeth, guys. Look how close that is. And hopefully we won't need that much deflection. Obviously we'll tame it at a later time. But it's so cool, guys, to start seeing this thing finally come to life. It's just super rewarding after all the ridiculous amounts of effort. And also, it's nice to see that the wiring so far is going to be probably easy enough to tidy up. Worst case scenario, we may have to get creative because we need room for the ESC in here. And I don't know what battery I'm going to use yet, guys. So, but the cool thing is, so far so good. It's just so cool. Thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to like and subscribe.